folks, welcome to today's episode of It's My 2 Bits Worth TV. I'm your host, Gert-Jan Zwiggelaar, and I have a few things I want to talk to you about. Just a few things, there's nothing really major, but just some interesting observations. I thought perhaps the first one I'll talk about is the topic that is in the forefront and has been for many months now, almost a year upcoming, and the covidocaust. So I just wanted to present an observation I made when I was visiting my doctor, and this was early on in the scamdemic. And he asked me, while he was wearing the coffee filter over his face, what was my opinion about this whole COVID-19 story. And so I explained to him that it's my opinion, and not just mine alone, that doctors are being admonished by their medical associations to ascribe COVID-19 to whatever death occurs. And so Buddy comes in with a knife in his forehead and an axe in his back, and I told my doctor, if that happens, you have to write COVID-19 on the death certificate. And at that point his eyes flickered, and I thought, aha, that's an overt admission that I hit right on the mark there. Also, dentists wearing these things, and when I go in to see the dentist, because I got this tooth issue that I need to deal with, I have to wear that face covering until such point that he looks into my mouth. And he's wearing the real too, as people seek to protect themselves from these marauding packs of savages. And we're seeing that, and now that we're heading ever closer to the important election in the United States, all hell is breaking loose there very rapidly. And I think that once the election is called, the proverbial excrement will hit a huge fan, and it'll spread that around that nation, and I think there will be some spillover into Canada, and so that's certainly concerning. Another thing that is concerning, apparently, some people are drawing attention to the importation, it seems, of Chinese troops onto Canadian soil in preparation for an attack on the United States. But I don't know how conceivable that really is. This article was saying there's thousands of Chinese troops, and the stalwart reporter showed a little group of, I don't know, there might have been 100 or less Chinese soldiers marching along some forest road in BC. It was hardly thousands, but it was brought to my attention many years ago already that apparently there may very well be already 1 million Chinese operatives actually stationed in North America in readiness for some kind of an assault on Canada and the United States. But in Canada, the Chinese takeover has been essentially in real estate. They now pretty much own Vancouver. The port of Vancouver has a very, very heavy Chinese presence there, and across the country we have Chinese people obviously everywhere. And if it is true, it has certainly been alleged by people that have some closer experience with Chinese people. And if you look at the book Ways That Are Dark, The Truth About China, that particular book also paints a very different picture of the Oriental soul, if you will, particularly the Chinese one. And yeah, it is certainly concerning. It is kind of like, yeah, very happy to see you, very good you come in my store. that behind your back, we white people are considered white devils, and they don't really care for us all that much. However, we do have to kind of put things in a certain perspective. The Chinese, just like the Negroes, do have an issue with white-looking people that have done some nasty things in their nation, in Africa, in their nations of Africa. The Jewish presence there. We see it, for example, in Zimbabwe, which used to be this beautiful country, Rhodesia. White people built there, and it's totally communist and destroyed. Thanks to because remember, communism, Judaism, Talmudism, Satanism, it's all the same thing. And, some horrible satanic things have been done in these places, as you know. By people that look like us. They look white, and so they who don't know any better, they who do not know any better, they have a problem distinguishing the difference, and so they think that people like myself are the descendants of people that enslaved their ancestors. But of course, try to reason with them. It's very difficult, sometimes it's about like as effective as trying to reason with your cat why he shouldn't have tuna this morning, and then he'll just give me all kinds of grief. I need to have my tuna, meow meow meow. And so that's the story. People whine and they complain, and then they burn buildings down and do all kinds of damage and harm, and if they do it to us, nothing seems to much happen. When somebody defends their property against these Black Lives Matter savages, and they affect an injury or a death upon the savages attacking him, it's the guy that's trying to protect himself who is charged and faces 95 years in jail. In the case of a young man owned a bar, was defending himself, and some chimp hybrid attacked him from behind after the defender had already fired warning shots, and he ends up killing his attacker, and then he was charged with all kinds of crimes and so on, and he eventually committed suicide because what he was facing was onerous, and the costs of defense and all of it. A huge Jewish nightmare. I apologize for that. I don't have a film crew, so I'm just doing this here by myself with my Lumix camera. I gotta figure out one of these days, how can I just continue filming for an hour or more without either the battery running out of power. In this case, that's what just happened. The battery ran out of power, so I had to put a new battery in, and then I'm trying to remember, okay, where did I leave off? What was I talking about? This is some minutes later. Yeah, if I had a film crew, I think one of these days, oh yeah, I know what I was talking about. I was talking about how funds are very helpful. And so if you do have some extra money, if you have some extra funds that you would like to donate, that would be very, very great. I've set up an account with Skrill because PayPal cut me off. Apparently I'm outside their community standards. I guess that was all because of a radio show I did last New Year's Eve. And that was on the Graham Hart show, actually. And I guess I was a little too outspoken for PayPal's sensitive Jewish nerves, and so I was cut off. But Skrill may be an option, and Interac. You can certainly send via Interac. My account is at the Royal Bank of Canada, and just under my name, Gert-Jan Zwigelaar. So But anyway, I'll put some information below, and if you wish to do that, that would be great. You could purchase from me my handbook for the righteous, or how to beat the unrighteous at their own game. It's a very interesting essay. I did talk about it in one of the earlier episodes when I spoke about the difference between the admiralty law and common law. And I've used information that I've written in that handbook in court to save myself a potential 60-day jail sentence and $13,500 in fines and fees. And I solved that issue in a 4-page letter that I had sent to the Crown, the City of London, but I addressed it to the court. And so, I forgot I had a coffee sitting here on the table. Now it's cold, and I don't have a microwave. So, and gee, I'm not a big fan of cold coffee. I like my coffee nice and hot. And anyway, be that as it may, it's no big deal, and there's no shortage of coffee in this house. I make sure of that. It's not actually interesting when you think about it, the amount of coffee that's consumed in the world. You know, the amount of coffee beans it takes to supply that. You know, all these beans hand-picked by Juan Valdez, according to the Nabob Coffee Company. You know, Juan Valdez is out there. I think it was Nabob. Maybe I'm mistaken. Somebody could perhaps correct me on that, but there was old Juan Valdez with his donkey, and you know, all those beans hand-picked by Juan. I don't know if they have pickers as good as Juan nowadays, but you would think about it, next to oil, coffee is the most heavily traded commodity on the planet. Tea just doesn't do it for me in the morning. Does it for you? You know, I mean, I know there's lots of tea drinkers, and I do like tea. I do drink tea from time to time, but you know, in the morning, coffee has got to be coffee, at least a couple of cups. Nice, you know, and I like a little variety in my cups. I don't always use the same cups, but I make sure that the cup big enough to handle what comes out of my French press. So every cup is individually made, and in this particular case, I've got heavy cream in here, which is and brown, the Demerara brown sugar. Yeah. What's also really lovely for sweetening coffee is maple syrup. You know, and I always, or generally, have a bottle of maple syrup in the fridge. Always remember, maple syrup needs to be refrigerated. It's in fine print on the label, but that's an organic product that you, unlike the corn syrup that passes for pancake syrup and people use by the gallon, that stuff is horribly poisonous garbage. You should be avoiding that. But real maple syrup, oh boy, that's really good, and it's also a good antioxidant. And then if you use it like I like it on French toast, which is a pretty regular breakfast I have, 3 eggs in a couple slices of bread and a bit of cream, and a pinch of salt, and then butter, lots of butter, and maple syrup and blueberries. That's a beautiful combination, and I eat that quite a bit. So a good source of antioxidants, blueberries and maple syrup. And of course eggs. I mean, I eat probably about 15 eggs a week, and I'm really healthy for somebody that's approaching 70 here in another month and a half. Yeah, 70. My gosh, it's come by fast. 70 years old. And I'm still, you know, trying to get stuff done. Yeah, I'm not giving up. This winter, I think I'll try and finish I, Barnabas, a Roman tale. I've got that sort of sitting. I haven't touched it for some months now. I mean, I've spent 5 years. I've got 1,080 pages. It's already well over 340,000 words, and I pick away at it. I mean, I write other things in between. I do lots of commentary on the internet, and I make videos, and you know, and so forth. Once in a while, I'll pick up a paintbrush when my hands are not too arthritic. I'll do some painting, or you know, maybe I'll tinkle away on my keyboard here and compose a new piece of music. It's sort of sitting there waiting for me to do that. But I've been watching a lot of documentaries lately, and I've been feeling a little bit despondent, I suppose, and kind of like the sails have been emptied of wind, because we have been thrown into a really bizarre situation worldwide. And I don't know if we're ever going to really come back to what we would consider to be normal. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 60% or more of small businesses that were forced to close, they will never come back. They have lost everything they had to keep a business going, and there's no collateral, there's nothing left for them to use to rebuild, and all that property is being bought up pennies on the dollar by the international parasites, as you well know. And that's exactly what they did during their fabricated Great Depression back in the 30s. That period was also totally fabricated by the international Jewish banking cartel, and millions of people suffered horrendously. Lots of people died in the richest country in the world, the United States. Yeah, it's very interesting, the way things are presented there. Their poverty level is actually very high, and it is increasing by the day, again, because of all of this covidocaust nonsense. And the people are scared, and a lot of people are now dependent on handouts for food, and when that starts to happen, people are completely dependent, and they have no longer any real will to resist, because if they do, they could very well not be fed, and starvation, that's no joy. Take a look at my video titled Starvation. Lots of people have no idea about what starvation is all about, and I tried to make it a bit clearer with that video. So you'll find it in BitChute. I think it's in Libri also, maybe in YouTube. I'm not sure. With YouTube, I'm basically every day counting, whether counting the minutes, I suppose, or the hours when my videos will be banned there. I have had videos banned there. My War Rhapsody, which is an illustrated music piece, my Rhapsody in Red, also called the War Rhapsody Illustrated, that was considered too dangerous for the snowflakes out there. And my foreword to Satan's Children was also banned. I was in the space of about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then that particular channel was banned for life, on YouTube. But you can find them all in BitChute. And if you haven't done so, I recommend take a look at Satan's Children. That particular series, there are 7 chapters. I was hoping to publish a book called Satan's Children with that information and some other, and I was working with a publisher out of Florida for a time, but unfortunately I think things went a bit sideways, and could very likely be because of this covidocaust, and so that project is on hold. I had spoken of it in some radio shows last year, and I was hoping that by spring of this year we would have had that book out, but it hasn't come out. So it still is kind of, I suppose, in the wings, I don't know. But in the meantime, 7 chapters I illustrated and narrated. And so, like I said, you can find those in BitChute. And I do believe I've got some of those posted in LBRY also. So I would suggest check those out. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to make this hours long. I think it's probably better to keep these things a little bit shorter and maybe to the point. Lots of truth warriors out there struggling. Mike Walsh, if any of you know of Mike, maybe you could send him a little extra cash. He, I think, has had to flee Spain, and book sales are not what they used to be, and so he's having a problem. For those of you who know Alfred Schaefer, take a look at Free Speech Monica's website, and you'll see the address there where you can send Alfred some mail. I did send him a fairly thick letter, but it was returned to me because the entity did not forward my letter since Alfred was moved to a different location, and nobody apprised me that he had been moved. So check out Free Speech Monica. That's the name of her website, and you'll find the address for him there. Jeff Berwick seems to be doing just fine in Mexico, so I don't think you need to be too concerned. Perhaps Max Egan might need a bit of support. Things in Australia have gone absolutely bonkers. And of course he's stuck his neck out for a long time, and he's got lots of followers, and so he is a threat to the communist Jews of Australia. And so, even just a note of support. He does fine work, albeit, nobody's perfect, and you don't necessarily have to agree with everything that any of these people say, but it's a good idea to pay attention to the alternative news speakers and the truth warriors. And again, I caution you, be careful, because there is an awful lot of misinformation being spilled out there in the name of alternative news. Those areas have also been infiltrated by the entity, and so it's a good idea to do a lot of your own research as well, so that you have a good strong basis on which to form your opinions. That's the reason why the entity has essentially deprogrammed or basically de-educated the Goyim children, so they don't know anything about history and science and what have you, but a smattering, and a lot of it's just forgotten once they finish their exams and pass on. So a lot of people don't really have a really significant foundation of information that they can rely upon to judge whether something that's being told to them is true or not. And so a lot of people, they basically give that up to authority figures, people with university degrees, and perhaps they are a politician, dumb as a sack of nails, a total enemy, but he's a politician, or she, and has all this credibility just because they were elected in a popularity contest. A demonocracy is a joke. That's an absolute ridiculous system whereby all kinds of people that do not deserve it end up in august positions. I mean, take a look at fruitcake Nancy Pelosi, for example, or totally Alzheimerized Joe Biden. 47 years in government's never really achieved anything, and trying to run for president with a hoe called Kamala Harris, married to a Jew, and this is a monster who basically, on her back worked her way to the top. And that's common knowledge, and that's why she's known as Ho Harris. And these are the kind of people that are running for the office of the president of the most powerful nation on the planet, with an arsenal that would choke Jupiter. And and these are the kind of people that are possibly going to be in charge of the government there. God help us, really, seriously. So if you haven't gotten to that point yet, I suggest that you get your relationship with your Creator figured out, because it's not a bad idea to get into a harmonic relationship there, and keep yourself focused, and don't fall victim to fear, because if you do that, you lose your reason, you lose your sight, your clear sight, and now more than ever you need that. So white people, get organized, stop bickering amongst yourselves about doctrinal issues that are of no consequence. get together and start figuring out how do we fight back and how do we regain the ground we've lost. Because if we don't, and if we don't do that soon, we may very well end up in a Gulag archipelago of our own right here in North America. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Gulag archipelago is required reading, in my opinion. Pick up, say, Volume 2, and just read that, Alexander Solzhenitsyn's books. Or read Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich and imagine yourself in that situation. Or like I said earlier, watch The Checklist and look at what you could very well be facing if we don't organize and start demanding a final solution. And in fact, perhaps effecting that ourselves. So stay tuned to my 2 Bits Worth TV for, like I said, upcoming. I will be demonstrating some important knots, and you can certainly trust me that I know about knots, and I learned about knots at a very early age because I went high up in Boy Scouts, and knot tying was one of the things that we focused on. So I know knots for all occasions. Yeah, especially the occasion that has to be upcoming and sooner than later. So anyway, this is Gertjan Zwiglar with another 2 Bits Worth, my 2 Bits Worth TV episode 8. And hopefully it was informative and perhaps even a little bit entertaining as you see me fumbling about with this camera and all of it. So here we went to 3 reels. And we'll cut it short there. So thanks again very much for watching. For those of you who have subscribed in whichever venue that you prefer, subscribe to my YouTube channels or BitChute. That's where I have most of my subscribers so far. Not huge numbers. Last time I checked, there was 69 in BitChute so far, and I think almost 800 views in my Satan's Children Forward video, 700, approaching 800 I think, last time I checked anyway. And so, yeah, bit by bit regaining some ground, and if you did like what I've done, or like what I'm doing, please don't hesitate and share this video or my other videos with your friends and family and people you think should know this stuff, or get a little bit of a laugh from a crazy old Dutch artist talking about this and that and adding a little bit of chatter to the chatter that's already out there. But who knows, we have to do what we can, because if we don't add something to the equation, then we kind of deserve what may be coming to us. At least I'm digging my heels in, as so many others are. Jim Rizzoli and Diane King also, they're not giving up. They're posting very regularly and hammering at the enemy, which is what we all need to do, so that eventually we reach very soon the critical mass necessary to win back our planet. So anyway, like, share, subscribe, you know the routine. If you want to add some comments, I really like it when people comment, and you can be assured that I will certainly